Hi everyone, welcome to SAMA. SAMA is an abbreviation for Spooky Ask Me Anything, where we have a guest expert on to talk about the area of expertise. Now today we're lucky to have two experts on board. We've got Clive de Carle and we have Paige. Their talk is about food for consciousness, happiness and health. 80% of the toxins in our bodies are self-inflicted from our food choices. Holly and Clive will discuss healthy foods and how to get them. Clive de Carle has dedicated himself to over 20 years to the pursuit of understanding mental and physical performance optimization, providing cutting-edge nutritional consultancy, and enabling thousands of clients to reverse the signs of illness and regain optimum health. Paige is the author of a groundbreaking book, Food for Consciousness, is the UK's leading writer and teacher on food and its effects on consciousness and happiness, performance and resilience. So welcome both you, Clive and Holly, to our summer show. I'll leave you two to discuss health matters relating to food. So over to you, Clive and Holly.
Well, thank you very much. Holly, as you mentioned, is the author of the book Food for Consciousness, and it would be great actually to, I'd very much like Holly to start just talking about her work, because there's really nobody else doing what she's doing. And, you know, I think we can all agree that one of the things we all want to be is happy. And Holly really is the master at explaining how food makes us happy.
Well, since we left our biological habitat in tropical forests thousands and thousands of years ago, as humans, we've really been in survival mode, and we've been very, very good at that because humans are a very adaptable species. But there's been a price to pay, and the great thing now is that we don't have to live so much in survival mode, in spite of all the challenges that face us and toxicity in the environment. The simple fact is we can move food around the world, and we have a lot more knowledge about how to nourish ourselves. We've kind of regained old knowledge. So in order, the neural system, the human neural system, is designed to be connected to the larger nature, and to get a great sense of well-being from that. But in order to do that, it needs to be rebuilt to something nearer its optimal potential. So this is quite a topic, and I've made it as succinct as I can in my book. But in a few minutes, how I describe it is that the neural system, after water, is made mainly of fat, and in order to build it to its full spec, we need undamaged, we need the full range of essential but undamaged fatty acids, which means unprocessed and unheated above biological temperature. And this is where the sort of raw food thing comes in. We also need, our neurotransmitters are mainly made of amino acids, and undamaged, the full variety of essential amino acids, undamaged, which means unheated above biological temperature. And of course we need all the minerals that we need, and we need carbohydrates in a form that's ideal, the ideal fuel for our bodies, which isn't starches, and from natural sources, fruit and vegetables and so forth. And there's this in our natural diet, there's a massive array of biochemicals, often called flavonoids, which most of which we probably don't understand, but one thing we do understand is they include monoamine oxidase inhibitors, which keep our neurotransmitter levels up. So actually natural antidepressants, our natural diet is antidepressant, and it's anti-degenerative disease is probably the safest way to put it. And if you look at sort of more of the recommendations for preventing degenerative disease, it's really all in the genuinely natural human diet. Now, I mean, the raw food thing has been really taking off, the last couple of decades, and so have plant-based diets. But what I think really needs to be, what those movements need help with, is making sure that people get the full range of nutrients, because eating out of a supermarket is not the same as eating out of the forest, where you've got all this insect material and soil material and all these other factors that you get in nature. So that's kind of my mission, is to help people already clocking, the sort of the plant-based diet or the raw diet, make sure they get get all the nutrition they need, but also showing people who've not seen that connection, you know, what that actually means, and in a very sort of scientifically minded way, just seeing the simple science of it, that if you heat food above biological temperature, it changes it chemically, and that changes our build, and it changes our ability to connect to the you know, the larger forces of nature, which is what we really need to feel at our best. Does this make sense?
It sounds quite intriguing. So you're actually killing the food by heating it up.
Yeah, you're changing it chemically, and that changes the build of the neural system, and it changes the levels of neurotransmitters. I mean, for me, I'm talking great generalities, and I make it very simplistic because that's, you know, that's what I want people to see the bigger picture. So because I mean, it's very clever. It's a very clever strategy of humans to learn to heat foods, because it means that we can eat foods that would normally be toxic to us, because heating will break down some of those toxins. For example, simple example, some vegetables that have goitrogens in them, when you heat them, those goitrogens will break down. And if you ate all those goitrogens, you would eventually your thyroid gland wouldn't work properly. So humans, you know, in every area of the world, humans have found their way of dealing with the foods that are available to them. But, you know, look at how cultures were eating, you know, different people, traditional people were living until the roads came. They did still eat a huge percentage of their food raw.
Right. It's interesting you're talking about some foods when you're cooking. There's some foods that raw that can damage your thyroid. Did I hear that correctly, Holly? You
know, like the cruciferous vegetables. I mean, when people go into raw diets, eventually they realise not to eat a huge amount of cruciferous vegetables, but they contain chemicals called goitrogens, which eventually inhibit the uptake of iodine by the thyroid gland, and you know, and all the implications of that. So this is just one of the examples of how cooking has helped humans to survive, so they can eat all these different plants and vegetables that aren't really human food. I mean, soy is another example. It's fantastic food that's helped humans survive. Ideally, it's fermented. You know, like obviously in countries like China and Japan, they don't drink, you know, traditionally drink gallons of soy milk. It was properly prepared and not eaten in vast amounts, but it's been a great ally. These foods have been good allies.
Yeah, sorry, Holly. But cooking is quite a recent invention, isn't it? How did humans survive before fire?
I think that, you know, there was a time when humans had all the foodstuffs they needed. You know, thinking in the tropical forest scenario before humans left that, everything was provided. And there's another, you know, it's just falling off the trees and coming out of the grounds. This is the, you know, the real story of the Garden of Eden. And the thing is, this is a really sort of subtle but really interesting thing that's happened, because when humans stopped having their original diet, it changed the biochemistry of the whole body. I mean, obviously that's logical, but the way we're constructed isn't just to do with our DNA, it's the way the DNA is read. If you change the chemistry of the body, the DNA is read differently. And we see that this in our own lives, you know, like we're different as children, as adults, we're built differently. Our DNA hasn't changed, it's the hormones have changed, so the DNA is read differently. If you change the plants and the plant material, when you're eating a vast amount of fresh plant material, there's a lot of very powerful hormones in plants and fruit, and we tend not to be aware of that now because we're so dumbed down. But, you know, you get cleaned out and get back into our pristine state, people start to even feel that. Even today, they will feel that. Now we're more familiar with the more powerful, you know, powerful so-called entheogenic plants. But really, all plants and herbs are you know, have what you could call psychoactive properties. Never know which is the best word to use these days to say on the safe side, but they all affect our mood, and they affect our neural system and how we feel. So, you know, living bathed in all this tropical forest biochemistry, we felt really quite differently. These hormones are very powerful and affected the way our DNA is read. You take that away, and then and you have a change in the way the DNA is read and the way the digestive system is built differently. So we can't even properly assimilate everything in that fully natural diet now. So we need to take that into account when we think of a diet for today. Also, I mean, the endocrine system, the hormone system is being changed, the neural system is changed. and our immune system changed, so it's not as strong as it used to be. So because we're in this different chemical mix, we're basically dominated now by our own hormones and our sex hormones, whereas we're designed to be living in a mix of our own hormones plus plant hormones plus the pineal hormones that were in abundance before this anatomical change to us. And that is actually a different sense of self. And I believe that's what we're all looking for. We're looking for the sense of self.
Right. We haven't got the diversity of earlier times.
Yeah, and we haven't got this sense of connection. When you've got all that chemistry pumping through, you've got this incredible sense of connection and a feeling of rightness. And that's what we've lost. And just trying to, and this is the drug thing, really. It's that people innately know that they should have some other chemistry in there and doing anything they can. And most humans do rely on substances to, blatantly stimulate or sedate or calm or make themselves happy. Most humans are doing that in one form or another, whether it's illegal or legal. And that's understandable, but it's just let's find some cleverer ways to do this, to get back our original chemistry so we feel the way we know we're designed to. And that is, it is a kind of high, but it's a very grounded and practical and functional sense. Because it's a sense of connection, to all, to reality, to the greater reality, which is amazing. So I think, to me, this is the core of the problem, that humans face, and it's the core of the solution.
Right. I believe, Clive, you can perform a test on a person and you can tell the person just what they are deficient in.
Well,
tell us a bit about this.
There are lots of. Could you give me a glass of water?
Yeah.
Right, there are lots of interesting tests out there. About 4 months ago, I bought a mineral scanner which uses spectrometry, uses infrared light, and you can read exactly what the mineral levels in the person are. It's like a nutritional X-ray. On top of that, there are many, many test strips you can buy to test, for instance, your nitric oxide levels, to test vitamin C levels, and many, many other functions of the body. Then one can go further and start to do blood tests. And I've been talking to two of the most interesting labs that do blood tests. And what you can do blood tests for are, for instance, delayed allergies. So many people are allergic to single items, but more often it's families of foods. And that family of foods could include foods that you might not think of being allergic to, like radishes. So the tests that one can do are really amazing. You can do a blood test and it will analyze over 800 different foods, and it'll tell you exactly which ones you're allergic to with a very, very high accuracy rate, and tell you when the reaction happens. For some people, eating radishes or whatever it might be 4 days afterwards that they get the damaging reaction. So, it's going to be, even if you kept a really accurate food diary, it could be quite difficult to figure out what it was or what combination of foods it was that upset you 4 days after you'd eaten them. But this delayed allergy test will give you the answers. Similarly, the same lab does something called predictive biomarkers. There are many predictive biomarkers, but the top 8 will predict with over 90% accuracy exactly when you're going to die.
Wow, that's pretty scary.
I know. But at the same time, as the report comes back, it will also tell you what you can do. With these predictive biomarkers, it is very scary, and I just tested for one of them because I could get that one done for free at the GP, and I have to say I was a little bit shocked and by the result. And as a result of the test, I immediately pumped the bicycle tires up on my bike and have started exercising more than I was before. And so I think it's hugely valuable. While scary, if you're going to die in, 4 years, you want to know about it and extend it to 14 years or whatever you can do. And you wait till you get ill, then it gets very difficult. But if you know in advance what you need to do, you're going to have to change your diet, change your thought patterns, change your exercise patterns, whatever it is, then while you're still healthy, it's easy to make the change and you can rapidly change things. And I was amazed not having got on my bike for 2 years, how weak my legs were the first time. And then the second time I doubled the distance, the third time I doubled the distance again. I was amazed how quick I got strong again. I was really surprised. And so from that, as just one simple example, one can see how one can change ill health into good health actually very rapidly. So often when I do the mineral test, for instance, and I tell people they're low on magnesium or they're low on lithium or they're low on iodine, it can be, in some cases, it can be within 1 minute of taking the supplement that some people feel better. It depends how well or ill they are. With the people who are really ill, often it's within seconds that they notice with some of the supplements that, oh, wow, I can feel that. Then with others like iodine, it might take 6 weeks. But for those people who can't remember why they walked in a room, in 6 weeks of taking iodine in the correct way, the correct type, with care and understanding and knowledge, they'll probably remember why they walked in the room again. So the other tests that one can do are for your brain. There are, again, there are many types, but there are 6 basic brain chemistry types. There's the type of person who, let's say, might be depressed and respond well to an SSRI, an antidepressant drug from the doctor. Now, that's one of the brain types, but if you gave that SSRI to the opposite brain type, you'd make them worse. So the doctors take a very one-size-fits-all. They've got SSRI, so they give it to everybody. But of course, some people get worse on that. So you can do blood tests to figure out exactly which of the 6 brain types you are, and then specifically target the neurochemistry that is going to fix you and make you happy again. People who are manic depressive, ADHD, ADD, schizophrenic, 90% of those can come out of that situation within days. And a blood test will tell you how. It's not cheap to have this sort of work done. The blood tests we're talking about, because you have to fly them on ice to America, but less than $1,000 US would cover the cost of each of those major ones. And I mean, how many lives are ruined by having a schizophrenic or a manic depressive in the family? But for less than $1,000, now you got the answer. So I'm in the process of setting up with the 2 most incredible labs to see if I can offer that service, at least from the UK. If people want to learn more about it, if they go onto my YouTube channel, which is Clive de Carle, and look for a couple of fairly recent videos I've put out with Dr. Russell Jaffe. He does the allergy testing and the predictive biomarkers. Then there's another gentleman, William Walsh, who I've interviewed also, who does the neurology testing. And I'd really advise anybody who's interested in this to watch the videos that I've put up, because the experts there are explaining how it works, why it works, and how much it costs, and so forth. William Walsh is particularly interesting because on TV in America, whenever they want an expert to talk about psychopaths, somebody takes, all the psychopaths that you probably know are usually taking SSRIs, and the SSRIs sends them absolutely bonkers, and they take their machine gun and go down to schools and shooting people. I mean, that's one of the theories as to what's happening. Other people might say it's mind control. But nevertheless, whenever there is a shooting or some murder from psychopaths, William Walsh is the one they bring out on CBS or whatever the TV stations are to explain the whys and the wherefores. And he started life as a prison visitor some 40 years ago. And he realized that the food was making the violent prisoners more violent. And essentially he was given a wing to take care of, and he reduced the violence, dramatically. And now he runs, I think, the biggest institute for correcting neurological issues. And both these 2 gentlemen worked with the most famous people of the time in America in the 70s and so on. Dr. Carl Pfeiffer is one of the names that they both worked with. But these guys were absolutely at the top of their profession, and reasonably controversial at the time because they were fixing things. And of course, as you know, the authorities or the pharmaceutical industry doesn't terribly like it if you fix stuff, you know. The patient cured is customer lost.
That's right, Clive. That's quite intriguing. You know how a food can affect one's character. The wrong foods can turn some people violent.
Well, and lack of foods can turn people violent. It turns out that 90% of the violent men in jails have low blood sugar. So I think we all know people who don't eat regularly. They get really grumpy. But there's the extreme of that, the violent people who, if they don't eat, they'll kill you because their brain chemistry changes. And now suddenly, I think this is the theory probably, they're reverting to the primitive part of the brain, that survival instinct, that they're so hungry they think they're going to die and they'll do anything, but they don't. They haven't put two and two together. They haven't put two and two together in a snack.
Right, and Holly, I guess you have strong views on this as well, because you look at things in the larger picture, and you probably have personal experience of this, where you can see people's health and their behaviour and everything improving with an increased quality of food.
Yeah, and people just become different type of people, like actually a different sense of self. That's what I'd emphasise really. My contribution. I mean, I think it's without proper nutrition, people are basically they're actually in a state of desperation and they don't really know why. And what happens is that when there's something wrong internally, people imagine it's something external that is the problem. But it's actually, most of it is to do with our own biochemistry and our own nerve systems. And it's projected out onto the world stage, and we see it every day. And what humans are doing, I mean, to change is an experiment, but it's a way less dangerous experiment than the experiment going on currently on the planet. It's a huge experiment going on the planet, and we see the results of it every day. And I think that's what we're seeing.
Some schools, Holly, have removed soft drinks and high sugar content foods from their the school canteens, and they've seen a marked improvement in their children's on their scholastic results, but also just in their general behaviour. And so this sort of backs up what you're saying, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a huge. I think it's a huge appeal to parents when you realise how much easier caring for children is when you get them on a suitable diet. Then bringing up children's easy. It's actually really, really easy, but it's not anybody's fault that they don't realise. You know, I mean, I think parents always get in the firing line and get blamed for everything. But how are parents supposed to know, and often how they're supposed to afford the right foods, because junk food is cheap food. So, you know, that's a whole sort of social issue to be sorted out. But, you know, nobody's told. How many people, you know, I ask a group of people who are really relatively well educated and say, you know, it's like, how many people here know that neurotransmitters are made from amino acids? And hardly anybody will know that. It's a really basic fact. And but that's the thing, it's like bringing up children is so much. I mean, I noticed this when I did it in my own family. You know, my second set of children were brought up on what I'd call more of an, I was even doing the organic whole food diet before that, and it doesn't compare with really getting back to basics of a properly natural diet. And I noticed little things like that my children would, you know, as toddlers even, just clear up their own toys when they finished playing a game. I was shocked the first time I saw that. The natural order, you bring in natural order, because there's a natural order to living things that comes from from larger forces than us, you know, whatever you choose to call that. And this natural order is in all nature and all living things. And when you infuse your body with that, you get that sense of natural order within yourself. And that's something you only can experience. It's impossible to explain, you know, that feeling, but it's a very, very particular kind of feeling. And then all your natural instincts and your intuition and your inspiration really starts to kick in. It's just a bigger experience of life. And then, you know, in terms of the cost, well, you know, when you're in that state, like a walk down in the park is more enjoyable than possibly, you know, doing something very extravagant would be when you're in this low brain state, you know. So it just expands your experience of life. and in a slightly invisible way, but you feel it, and it improves harmony between people. One of the things I like talking about is melatonin, because melatonin is something that is designed to be pumped in large quantities from the pineal gland. Now it's very low, and that's partly to do with this. It's mainly to do with the epigenetic changes, but it's also now been compounded by the electromagnetic frequencies that we all know about in mobiles and Wi-Fi's and smart meters and all that. So that's reducing the activity of the pineal gland even more, because the pineal gland responds to light. So, you know, originally the idea is that when it gets dark, our pineal glands respond to that by pumping some more melatonin, so we sleep. And but the electromagnetic frequencies that are invisible to us will still go into our skulls, and the pineal gland picks them up as light, so it doesn't get the message to turn on more melatonin. So, you know, all the sleep problems now, which you never heard about years ago, and sleep problems cause further degenerate, you know, they cause further problems to the brain, and, you know, that get into a sort of cycle that's out of control. So melatonin, one interesting things about melatonin is if you supplement everybody in your family with melatonin, you'll generally find they will get on better, because they feel more, and then they're more sensitive to each other, more empathic, and there's more harmony in the family. And I've seen that again and again, actually, and you don't really read about that on the internet or anything. It's like just something, you know, kind of you need to hear about.
We need re-educating. We need to go back to how we were.
Yeah, but not how we were, say, 200 years ago. You know, it's so back and far into the past. It's like the future, if you know what I mean. You know, it's
Right.
Humans have gone off track a long while ago, and so, you know, it is a long while ago. I do believe it's just accelerated and compounded. So I'm very much in favour of we look forward. You know, we take lessons from the past, but don't attempt to go backwards, because that in itself does something weird to our brains, if you see what I mean. Because humans are designed to be goal orientated. Humans are happy when they're working towards goals, and you know, and they've got a vision in front of them, something they like and they want, and that's another has effect on dopamine levels. For example, when we're working towards something we want, our dopamine levels, and delaying gratification, our dopamine levels get lovely and high. As soon as we get what we want, they crash, and then we need to be on the next goal, and that's fine to be like that. There's nothing wrong with it. That's an enjoyable way to live, understanding we're working towards these lovely goals, and, you know, in the center of our minds. And I do believe that a lot of the problems with drugs are the dopamine levels being too low, because people don't know that they need to be working towards goals. It sounds such a stupid thing, and work has become a dirty word, but actually because we're, you know, maybe not working, you know, I think people like us, we're obviously working towards goals we believe in, but if you're working towards goals that you don't believe in, it's not quite the same. But we need to be working towards genuine goals to be happy. Teleological, nice word. Humans are teleological, designed to be working towards goals.
Lovely. We've had a few questions in. This is a question from Glenn Russell, who asks, are foods such as organic or even biodynamic foods, do they contain all the minerals and trace elements that are contained within the soil? Or does one still, I'm sort of changing, I'm expanding her question, in today's society, modern world, do we still need to take supplements?
I think we both agree about this, don't we?
Well, I mean, unless you're growing your own foods and they're old varieties, you know, all the cucumbers have got seeds in that you could plant the next year and so on. If you were growing it in the old-fashioned way on soil that had never ever been depleted, you'd probably be all right, except for the fact we're knocked down by the toxins in the air, and, you know, so it's very difficult these days, even in that idyllic circumstance of growing your own food, to be sure that you are getting everything, because, you know, one of the big things is stress. You see, if you are under great stress, and who of us out there isn't under great stress, you deplete magnesium. If you deplete magnesium, then nothing works properly. So, but most organic farms are not what you would ideally expect or want, probably. You know, I had an organic farm for 9 years in Spain. Over the 9 years, they never came once to check.
There's so many factors that mean that the minerals are in our food. I mean, there's the first one is deforestation, which we hear about in the Amazon, but has happened over the rest of the world. For example, in Britain, the forests went, in a large way in the time of the shipping industry in Tudor times. So they haven't got the trees pulling the minerals up through the soil. And then intensive farming will destroy the topsoil in about 10 years, I believe. And then because of the way the sewage system has worked, it's basically exporting the minerals that humans consume out to sea. And then there's more subtle things like if you're eating, I advocate eating tropical fruit. I think it's great, but if you're bringing it in, if you're importing it, then that will be fruit that's not ripened on the tree, and that's the minerals go into the fruit when it ripens. So you just got you get other benefits from the fruit, but it'll be mineral deficient. So there's, and all the things that Clive was talking about, and that we need more because we're dealing with stresses, and then we're not absorbing properly. So when you add it all up, I think we have to, everybody has to. You simply cannot get it from the food anymore. The way that, and I think once you accept that we're living in these sort of crazy times, and make it an adventure and make it fun, rather than, get over the grieving of the loss of paradise on earth and that it's coming back, but we're not in it right now. So in this crazy adventure, everybody needs to mineral supplement, as far as I can tell. And organic does not mean that the minerals are there. It just means that a load of poisonous chemicals haven't recently been put on the land, hopefully.
Hopefully. Biodynamic, I know biodynamic gardeners, and generally speaking, if they are calling themselves biodynamic, that is like a huge sign above their head saying, we care. And the chances are that the biodynamic farmers would have chosen land that's been undamaged. They would have chosen the old varieties of seeds and so on.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, is because of the new variety, they're not pulling the minerals out of the soil in the same way. So, but
the most dangerous thing clearly is to have vegetables that are being grown with Monsanto's Roundup, the glyphosate poison, because the glyphosate's action is to stop the uptake of minerals. That's how it kills the plants. That's why it's such an effective herbicide. So of course, if you grow plants with glyphosate, that they will be, even the ones that are meant to be resistant to it, they will be very, very low on minerals by default. So all the normal food in the supermarkets with glyphosate on it is mineral deficient to a huge degree, worrying degree. And glyphosate is only one of the many, many ingredients in Roundup. And many other things.
Now, we've just, you're touching on another question actually that's come through. It was Kamala Walker who asks, what about eating seasonal fruit and vegetables? Because supermarkets now provide these all year round. And so presumably they'll be harvested from farms which have used poisons to prevent prevent weeds, and then picked whilst they're unripe and put into the cold storage, and then possibly ripened with some gas later. So, what are your thoughts on that? What supermarkets are doing is basically depleting people for minerals and vitamins, and introducing a poison at the same time. Do you agree with that analysis, Holly?
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah. And you're looking at it. I mean, we can resort to supermarkets when necessary, but it's just as long as we don't believe that we're getting, we're not getting complete food there. And even then, another thing that we don't often think about is how sterile the food is there. It's not covered in soil. It's not got insect material in it, and that is really, whether we like it or not, how we're designed to eat. And so we're in survival mode, trying to create something more. If you look around, you see it's actually a global famine. We've got the official famines, but if you know how to see what nutritional deficiency, if you just look at everybody around you, anybody who's overeating or overweight is basically malnourished, because the only reason why humans would overeat is not because they're a bad person or emotionally disturbed or grieving, it's because they're starving. And the body compels you. I mean, I've actually myself had situations where I've slept walked in the middle of the night to eat. When that's how strong the body will have to get its nutrients. It will get them by whatever means it can. It's trying to look after us, and if the price is carrying around some extra pounds of fat, then that's what it will do for us. So in the middle of all the overweight, people are actually starving.
Gosh. A question from Andre is asking, are we wasting our time with trying to buy nutritious foods from shops? You know, do we have to buy supplements in this modern world?
I think we absolutely do, but we should still get the best food that we can. You know, give in the best food that we can source, plus have supplements. And I don't think there's any way around that at all. I think it's just how it is, and especially for the children.
Do you see a change, Holly? Do you think that we're going to have a future which is going to get progressively more depleted of life-giving minerals and vitamins?
In the short term, I mean, I'm an eternal optimist. So I think, you know, the future's not done yet. You know, the future's not defined. By, you know, by definition, the future is open. But in the short term, it's probably getting worse. But there's so much we can do. But what my personal take on it is our first, the first priority is to re-nourish our neural systems, to rebuild our neural systems so that we know what to do, because there's probably more that we can do that we simply haven't thought of. You know, when you're like that eureka moment, when you see through a problem, why didn't I think of that before? It's so obvious, such a simple thing to do. And I think there's a lot of that. And that's, I may call that my number one ethic, is to regenerate the human neural system, because that's what's causing the problem. And there are solutions in there. So, you know, that's what my writing's all about, you know, and take it into more depth than actually we've even talked about. You know, there's more things we can do than even this.
It sounds very interesting. Now, Clive, your work is pretty much aligned with Holly's. Holly, I see that you take more the wider view, and Clive, you take the focused view. Do you exchange ideas on how to improve people's health? Do you ever sort of consult each other for help?
Constantly.
But yeah, we're working together so well that we're really a partnership, and because we balance each other out nicely.
Yeah.
Right. And so if someone, Clive, came to you for testing, it's very likely that Holly would come to assist in bringing back someone to health.
Well, that's what the client wanted, of course. Yes, very much so.
Well, the thing is, Clive's very good, like I said, the details, and he can take very specific problems and get specific help. Because, you know, the thing is, I can talk about particular foods and supplements, but in someone's individual situation where they need testing and they need the right sort of whatever, this is where Clive is so brilliant. And something I'm very good at is making very delicious natural food. It's like, you know, I mean, I've had a history of doing catering, for example, just on the merits of how nice my food tastes. And of course, what would you expect? The natural diet of our species should be delicious to us. And I think that's something I noticed living in the East, is there's more of an understanding that food that is good for us tastes nice. And I know particularly in England, there's an idea that if something's good for you, it tastes horrible. And I have to play to that sometimes, and I give people things and tell them they're going to taste horrible, because then they know it's good for them. But obviously we're designed to like the foods that are good for us. It's just been distorted because, for example, we must have, we're designed to take in natural sugars and natural fats. But so we've got a natural longing for that. But if we've been fed the wrong fats. So people think, I've got to cut out fat, and think all these fatty things that they like aren't good for them, but what it is, they need the good fats.
Okay, so if someone wanted good fats, what food should they eat?
Well, I mean, just one example, like hemp milk has got most of the essential fatty acids, not all, but most essential fatty acids, and you can make a delicious hemp milk with, say, water and orange juice, and then you can make a smoothie where you have various fruits or seeds or superfoods, and that would just be completely delicious. So you need the polyunsaturated fats, the omega-3s and omega-6 that you get from peas, things like hemp milk. And then the monounsaturated fats aren't really essential fats, but because of the state we're in, it's difficult for us to convert fats from one type to another, so it's good to have a good range. So things like avocados and olives, obviously delicious. Good quality olive oil, and you have to really watch out. That's a whole topic in itself. Coconut oil is the saturated fat. That's a good idea to have every day. Only safe fat to cook in, because saturated fats, which we've had about press, but actually they're the only ones that say they can cook in. Never cook in monounsaturated or polyunsaturated fat.
Well, personally, I like butter.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of butter. But of course, there's butter and there's butter. One of the problems is now that of what they're doing with all the animals, and let's just take the cows as one example. In America, of course, they're keeping a lot of cows in sort of on concrete floors, all bashed together. They don't know what grass is. In England now, most of the cows are no longer in the fields. They put them inside in factories. So not only don't they know what grass is, they don't know what sunshine is either. It's the most frightening situation. And they've bred the cows to be monsters. The Holstein cows, those ones you see dragging their udders down the road because they're so huge and overinflamed and so on. That doesn't make healthy milk. There are two types of milk, basically, type A and type B. And just to confuse everybody, type B is the one you want. The Jerseys and the Guernseys will produce type B, but some of the Holsteins produce this type A, which is essentially poisonous to humans.
It's an amino acid called the proline amino acid has now been changed to the histidine amino acid, which for some people, not everybody so much, but some people, they're so allergic to it, it can give them diabetes or neurological problems. So then there's this genuine fear of milk, but actually milk where the animals were properly looked after as members of the family, and the milk was drunk raw and preferably fermented in the form of kefir or something like that, or even cheeses, was a completely different kind of thing. And that's something I understood, that 100 or more years ago, doctors, you go to the doctor and you might be the same way people talk about drink green juice. They say drink milk because it was raw milk made from traditional animals. And now, now I see the same thing will happen to green juice. They'll pasteurize it and put it in bottles, and people still think it's a health drink, which is exactly what they did to milk. That's how humans have got.
But if your grandmother, great-great-grandmother or something went into the shops and you showed them the milk, they would argue stringently that's not milk because it's white coloured when milk should be yellow, creamy coloured with lots and lots of cream on top. So what we're looking at as milk and accepting as milk really is rubbish. And if it's pasteurized or pasteurized or is low fat or semi-skimmed, it's really quite unhealthy. You'd think that semi-skimmed from the media would be healthier than full fat, but the opposite is true. If you were drinking semi-skimmed, let's say, or full fat, which of those two would make you fatter? Well, the skim milk, bizarrely, makes people fatter than full cream, because full cream is natural.
And it's got the fat because it's designed in a certain milk, even though it's not human milk, it still is designed to be as nourishment. So it's got all the fat-soluble vitamins, which the D and the K2, which now allow you to absorb the calcium. So although the calcium's in the semi-skim milk, you can't absorb it properly because the fat-soluble vitamins have been taken out.
Yeah.
But it's a good move commercially because it means that the cream can then be sold off, and the semi-skim milk isn't any cheaper. But they can sell off the cream. So that's what it's all about. It's just industry.
Yep.
But if a consumer goes into a shop and they see two bottles of milk, one of them has got milk which is off-white and one is a beautiful white, which one would they go for?
Well, the best milk, in theory, comes from the Jersey cow, which really is a creamy, yellowy colour. And you can see it easily, you can spot it.
Now you touched on pasteurization. That's heating food so that it kills the germs inside, so it doesn't go off if it's used for storage. Holly, what temperature is a safe temperature? Mujiru asked this question. What's a safe temperature that you can take foods before you stop moving?
It does vary from food to food and different constituency, but the temperature's always quoted is 40 degrees. It's just like human body temperature, biological temperature. I mean, there's some things that will stay intact above that, and some things are going to disintegrate before that. For example, polyunsaturated oils, when the seeds are ground and the oil is left lying around at room temperature, is going to go rancid within minutes. So you just got to think about, it's about keeping the food intact. So you just got to think mechanically about all this kind of thing, really. But the general temperature that you're asking about is approximately 40 degrees, or human body temperature, and after you heat stuff above that temperature, it's starting to degrade.
So strictly speaking, after you've pressed an oil, for instance, unless you've done it in an environment where instead of air there is nitrogen, it will go rancid, as Holly says. And so people don't realize that all those oils in bottles on the shelf are rancid. Even may not taste rancid.
Something I do too, which I think works better with the oils is, soak a lot of seeds and then overnight, and then drain them and blend them into smoothies, and you've got the oils completely fresh. Now, I notice if I make smoothies like that, within half an hour, my family don't want to eat them because they're sensitive to this kind of thing, and they can tell that it's off. But I think we're so, generally speaking, we're so used to eating food that's gone off, we can't tell the difference. But when you start to eat differently, you soon do. And the interesting thing, your taste buds change, and your idea of what's delicious changes. You can change very, very, very fast. Something I do is actually make foods that taste like familiar cooked dishes and things we're used to make that emotional transference. But then, to be honest, after a while of eating the food that you designed to your body so happy, it just changes your taste buds, and things that you thought you'd never like to eat, you actually enjoy. It's true, isn't it?
It's most unusual. I've been surprised by what, experiencing my taste buds changing.
Yeah.
I like completely different foods than
and it's not forced, it's just something that naturally happens. It's a genuine feeling.
And I think the body knows what's good for it.
Yeah, but it's just not used to getting it. No.
So,
and of course, your body needs time to acclimatise to the new flavours at the very beginning as well.
Yeah.
It takes a while, especially sugar. Sugar's got quite a strong pull, but it's so hard to start, adding less sugar until you go to no added sugar.
But in actual fact, it's so easy if you know your minerals, because you see, I can do a 5-minute mineral test on somebody, and I can tell them exactly why they're craving the sugars. Because I can see it in the chart. Because if you're low on certain minerals, you're going to crave certain foods.
And it goes so fast once people get those minerals in.
It can be a day, within a day.
Yeah.
You can be craving chocolate, carbs, sugar, and you correct that. Next day you're not. Walk right past the same food. You might have a little bite, but you won't eat it all. It's incredible how quickly things can change. Really surprising.
That's remarkable. Sorry, Holly.
No, I was just saying we're more about our biochemistry than we think we're so, we're humans and we're this and we're that, but we're more about our biochemistry than we realise, which I know we've talked about a lot in this interview.
But it's, at the beginning you were saying about what is a drug. I mean, a drug is something that you want to do repeatedly and makes you happy. So people eat chocolate every day because it makes them happy. It releases all sorts of wonderful love and happiness chemicals in the brain. But of course, if you have your mineral balance right, then you're naturally producing those chemicals in your brain, and you're happy without having to resort to stuffing your face with lots of chocolate. I mean, I love chocolate, but you don't need the amounts that people need.
Yeah, and it's optional. It becomes a choice then. Yeah, and there's one particular mineral as well that people that makes them often crave, especially women, crave chocolate, and they don't. It's just one mineral, and all that chocolate craving can go, and then you can enjoy it when you want to.
I think there's the one main mineral, and if we're paid enough money, we will divulge it. maybe we'll tell you, maybe. And it's chromium, by the way.
And magnesium. I think a lot of women crave chocolate because of magnesium.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And then also all the trace minerals. You see, what it really comes down to is it's not just one thing really, although there are these major points. You want your body to be totally balanced. And to be balanced, you really need to make sure you've got enough of every single mineral. There are more than 70 of them. For those of you who might want to know, there are really about approximately 100 foods that you need to take in, basically.
100 nutrients.
100 separate nutrients, rather.
And there's probably more biochemicals that we don't quite understand. That are in lots of fruit and veg that we haven't even worked out. But there are definitely known 100 nutrients that we cannot make ourselves in our own bodies.
Yes.
And we need to take in all of that, or we're missing something.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's not a sofa. It's not a new sofa and it's not a new car. It's a mineral or amino acid or something of that nature.
Yeah. I mean, it really is incredible how getting the differences that getting it right will make, because, you know, uncontrollable children can become happy. I mean, you know, it can be a little tricky, because if that child is totally addicted to pizza, pies, pastries and breads and all that stuff, it is an addiction. You know, wheat particularly is highly, highly addictive.
You just have to take them through it.
Yeah, and find the alternatives. At the risk of being blatant, Holly's book, Food for Consciousness, has an awful lot of recipes in it, which...
including pizzas.
Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously the eye does a lot of eating. So if you can make the food look right to the eye, then it's just a question of education. I realized many years ago, if you wanted to change somebody's food habits, that there is essentially a 3-day and a 21-day cycle to it. You know, and the same would be if somebody wanted to be free from tobacco or something, they want to give up some addiction. Basically, the first 3 days are a little bit tricky, because your brain is going, you want one, you want one, you want one, sort of thing. Yeah. And the trick there is to know what you're going to do instead. So when you get the brain nag saying you really want a cigarette or you really want the chocolate, or if that happens, then you need to have in your mind, okay, what's the alternative? Maybe I've always wanted to play guitar. So each time you want a cigarette, you say, well, I've actually bought myself, with the money I saved, I bought myself a guitar and I'm now going to play it. Or you might want to do art or something. So for the first 3 days, it's a nag. 21 days later, you're free from it. And this is a good example of this, is people who take sugar in their coffee or tea, for instance, and would like to not need the sugar. When you stop the sugar, and you always cut down, but 21 days after you've stopped, I mean, let's say you're putting sugar in your tea and you drink tea without sugar at the beginning, go, oh, it's not sweet enough. End of 21 days, you'll drink the tea with the sugar and you go, oh, it's much too sweet. 21 days and your body chemistry, generally speaking, will change for the better.
And there's lots of things that you can have, you know, like, for example, lucuma, like it's just dried fruit, and that's deliciously sweet. And that's the kind of natural sugars that we need. So, yeah. So, you know, there's loads of ways of getting sweetness in an appropriate way without having sugar.
And there's also, of course, I mean, this particularly relates to chocolate. There are ways to, you know, to use products like that. I quite like maca as a sweetener for chocolate. You know, if you're making your own chocolates, then it's easy to make them sugar-free.
It's easy to make chocolate. It's ridiculously easy to make your own raw chocolate. It's less trouble than going out to the shop. Really, it takes less time.
Yes, and less expensive too. I mean, what I like to do is I like to get some coconut oil and heat it up a little bit so it's melted. Put in, if you've got, let's say you've got a bunch of overripe bananas that you forgot to eat and otherwise you might throw away. Bizarrely, overripe bananas can be very, very healthy. Healthier than underripe ones, or even what we might call normal bananas. So you put in some raw chocolate powder, some maca, mash up loads of bananas in there with the coconut oil, and then just leave it to set. Just that, incredibly simple. Most people go, wow.
Yeah.
And because you've now enrobed the bananas with the chocolate and the coconut oil, and coconut oil, of course, is antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, you've drastically increased the life of the bananas. So, you know, the bananas that would be unedible the next day suddenly will last a week. And, you know, it's all, you know, my judgment is, if the kids like them, now you've got something that's going to be reasonably popular.
Yeah.
And so there's an art, obviously, to making these chocolates just right, so they're not too chocolatey. You know. But again, there are recipes for all this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways to convert bad eating habits into really good ones.
And it's also stuff that you can share socially, because it is nice. It's just people don't know about it.
Yeah.
So people ask about socially, but I've never been to a restaurant or cafe where they will not give you a salad of some description or a piece of fruit. That's never a problem, ever. And anywhere in the world, these things exist. Fruit and vegetables exist all over the world. And, you know, if you go into a social occasion, you just make something to share, and people, you know, the only problem is you have to remember that you're going to have to share it, because I think I'll just take it for me. And then everybody wants all of that, so you have to take loads because it's the nicest thing there probably. So it's just knowing. There's nothing difficult about any of this. It's just knowing, isn't it? It's just knowing there's some simple or reorganizing. When you reorganize, it's actually easier, and it's easier to travel this way.
And there's also the thing about how you feel. I mean, here in England, I don't know how it is elsewhere, but at Christmas, people usually eat turkey, and turkey's full of the amino acid tryptophan. And for a lot of people, after a turkey Christmas dinner, all they can possibly do is sleep, because the turkey, for those people who feel, if you feel sleepy after a meal, you've got to ask yourself whether you've eaten the right food for you, because if you had the right food, let's say you had a salad or something, nuts, seeds, bit of fish, or whatever, however you like your salads, you might feel like going and playing a game of tennis, as opposed to that other type of meal that weighs you down. You just want to lie down.
That's the after lunch slump,
Yeah.
which is it's known that people are not very productive in the first part of the afternoon, but that's ridiculous.
When I was working in ophthalmic optics, we used to recommend the patients to go and see various ophthalmic specialists in London. And there were some where we'd say, go and see them in the morning. Do not take a afternoon appointment. But often that was because they used to go out drinking at lunchtime and they're trying to do eye surgery. And when they're drunk, I mean, it's just horrendous. So I hope we've sort of answered some of your questions.
Right. This viewer has asked, if someone's vegetarian, what supplements would you recommend they take? Because they're not getting what meat contains. Is there anything which they may likely be deficient in?
Something to watch out for, particularly omega-3 oils we do get from plant material, but most people aren't able to convert them into the EPA and DHA that animals need, although in theory we can do that, most of us can't. So if you're not vegetarian, you can get that from fish oil. If you are vegetarian, definitely get an algae supplement containing EHA and DPA, and there's a few on the market. You can get them online, definitely those. As we get older, CoQ10, we tend not to produce our own CoQ10. That's essential for making energy in the cells. The only real animal source is, the only real source is meat or organ meats, and you take that as easy supplement, and that works wonders. Anything else you think of? The B vitamins, probably vegetarians are okay, aren't they? But except that we all tend to be short of B vitamins. Well,
the vegetarians are going to be possibly short of B12 after a while. You get a good long storage in your body of B12, but there are some people who thrive on being vegans and vegetarians, but a lot of people just don't, and maybe they would have done in the wild in some.
Well, it's the insect material. This is what I think it's about, is that as we're not designed to eat sterile plant material, it's insect-laden plant material, which is nutritionally quite different. But, there are supplements you can take to kind of sort of make up for that. And vitamin A can be a problem for some women because the beta-carotene form in plants, many women cannot convert that adequately to retinol, which we need. So vitamin A supplementation is a good idea, especially for some women. Vitamin D is often a problem, just because in theory we get it from the sun, but are we out in the sun enough? And then if you're living at a high latitude, then in the winter time the sun isn't even high enough to shine UVB light on the skin. So
right. And if a vegetarian woman wanted to get pregnant, would there be any recommendations that you'd give this person?
Yeah, proper test and make sure they've got make sure they're getting everything in, get a mineral test, make sure they're totally, how many months before they conceive a child, would you say?
So, if you really wanted to give birth to the optimum child, I believe both mother and father should start addressing their nutritional and supplemental needs 2 years early. Right? Actually, if you really wanted to get it absolutely spot on, have the most genius children out, 2 years would be a good time. But any length of time, the longer you think about it in advance and act on it. There's some fantastic books out there. There's a book called The Brighton Baby, the Brighton baby, which is fantastic load of information for anybody thinking in advance. There's also, I mean, the thing is, I think with vegetarians, that where do they draw the line? Let's say an unfertilized egg, is that acceptable? You know, you're not necessarily killing anything to get that. The chicken or the duck or the goose or whatever will just lay another one. But I personally think that eggs are a very good food, and I think that our ancestors, hundreds of thousands of years ago, or whenever, would have found them very easy to get.
I think that probably. I think eggs are various. Not, it wouldn't be just hen and duck eggs. Eggs of all different sorts of species. I think will be naturally consumed as part of the diet. And like I say, if the people are concerned about ethics, there are situations around where hens have a better life than us. You just got to find them. And I agree with you. And I think they're just such a complete source of nutrition. And supplements are great, but we don't. We're not clever enough to understand everything that body needs. So there's always a bit of an experiment. And I think if even an egg yolk, for example, high quality raw egg yolk could be thrown into a smoothie, and it would just cover a load of stuff we might not even be aware of. Very complete food.
But if you just take one mineral, let's say that the mother is low on selenium. There is a risk, a very real risk, if you're very low on selenium, that the baby could be born with Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, or muscular dystrophy. Now, if the mother has enough selenium, they will be born without any of those problems. Every birth defect, from cleft palate to clubbed foot, whatever, they're all deficiencies.
And there's iodine. I mean, iodine is crucial for a baby's intelligence. Isn't it?
Absolutely crucial. You want to have a clever baby.
And most people are deficient in iodine.
I would say 95% on a Western diet. And that would probably include China.
Nowadays, but maybe not.
Yeah, not in the old days, but if they're eating the modern diet.
Right, yeah.
That's quite intriguing. Now, I've got quite a few questions, so just a quick answer each from both of you. Do you think vegetarians get enough protein in their diet?
I think they can do if they think it through. I think you just got to think it through more as a vegetarian.
Yeah, I mean, I would. If I was eating a purely veggie diet, I'd certainly be, one of my favourites is hulled hemp seeds without the shell, and you have to keep them in the fridge and eat them pretty rapidly, but full of amino acids, very tasty. You can add them to sweet things or savoury things, sprinkle them on salad, put them on yogurt, whatever, fruit, whatever you like. One does have to think carefully, otherwise being vegan or vegetarian, you can easily slip into deficiency.
I would still say our natural way to get amino acids probably is primarily through plant material, but you've got to regain the art of how to do it.
And, a lot of people don't like to hear this if they're vegans, but I interviewed Dr. Heinz Reinwald, a very famous German doctor, oncologist, and we were talking about vegan and vegetarianism. I said, what do you think about it? And he said, well, I can see a vegan and a vegetarian in the cancer ward. And I said, well, how? He said, well, they're so weak. This is a bit of a generalization, and I'm just a reporter, but one's got to be careful. A lot of teenagers these days are becoming vegan or vegetarian, thinking that a diet of pizza is fine.
It's not. You just got to look into it and research it, because it's not. You can't be just taking out the meat. I think vegetarians probably know this now, but you can get all the amino acids really from plant sources, but you've got to know what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Are there any foods that are inflammatory or anti-inflammatory?
Yeah, loads. And of course, it may be different from one person to another, but the modern wheat, for probably maybe 40% of the population now, modern wheat is inflammatory. And inflammation, described in other words, is a repair deficit. In other words, inflammation is your inability to repair yourself, because we're naturally self-repairing. And so some foods, or lack of some nutrients, will mean you can't self-repair. And really everybody who's ill, their problem is that they can't self-repair. So why would that be? Well, the only reason you can't self-repair would be physical accident. Now you got something wrong with you from that perspective, or deficiency and or toxicity. Nobody's low on drugs from the doctors. That's not the answer.
And so if, are there any foods that reduce inflammation, Holly? Is there any foods that one can take?
Oh, God, you got, I don't.
Well,
We can pass on to the next question and come back to this one later if you like.
well, I mean, there are foods like ginger, turmeric, lots of the spices can be anti-inflammatory. Vitamin C, selenium. You know, there are many factors to bring down inflammation. For older people, they may be inflamed for some other reason entirely, like they're dehydrated. You know, there's so many factors, but all it is we need to get back to how our ancestors did it, because they survived. You know, our families wouldn't be here now if it hadn't been for our ancestors knowing how to fix problems, knowing what herbs would fix what, if they cut themselves and were inflamed, exactly. what to do. And this knowledge is now, for the most part, lost for most people. So they rely on the doctors and drugs and then wonder why it doesn't work.
Yes, so we don't know what we don't know. You know, even in my lifetime, I've seen herbal remedies disappear and nobody's even heard of them because they don't even know they've been banned.
Yeah, I advise everybody, if they've got granny still alive or elderly relatives in the family, you say, do you remember when you were young, if something went wrong with your body, what granny or grandfather or whatever did? You know, try and remember the old remedies. And if, let's say, somebody's now in the diaspora and they're in a different country to their family, write to everybody and get the local remedies, because if they work for your ancestors, they likely work for you. And try and keep the knowledge alive. Well, obviously, people have written books about all the old knowledge, but you know, basically, probably if your granny's still alive, she'll tell you, oh, in the old days we used to take bicarbonate of soda for that, or we used to have 2 eggs, and who knows? But
okay, moving on in the questions. What foods are good for the brain and for your memory?
Specific, some interesting specific herbs and foods like lion's mane, mycelium, Chinese herb that helps regrow neural tissue. Like ginkgo is great for memory, improves circulation of the brain. There's a wonderful herb called rhodiola that it's like a sort of healthy alternative to caffeine. It's great for mental work, you know, staying up partying or doing intense mental work. Oh, there's so many. I mean, there's just so much.
Food-wise, eggs, I would say, are a brilliant brain food. Fatty fish, brilliant brain food. Walnuts, you know, but I mean, everything is a brain food.
Well, it's
really.
all of it. It's all about, it's really, to be honest, people have this magic pill, but you really got to think all the constituents that are needed. And that's the way forward, really, is to get the whole thing rebuilt. And then you can take, my approach is it's like a rebuilding it, reactivating it, and you're putting herbs on top to sort of tweak it and activate things. But that's a bit, you're not really making the most of it if you haven't given it the proper nourishment. You know, it's like there's nootropics are getting very, very popular, but I kind of cringe because I think, well, you know, there's such a more natural, elegant way to do this. Is if you haven't got the right building blocks in the first place, you're trying to push something that's not really nourished to go, really, and then people can get burnt out very easily. Whereas if you go for you talk about cleansing the whole system, nourishing the whole system, which includes the neural system, and getting neurotransmitter. You know, the amino acids in for the neurotransmitters, and then you can tweak it. And then when you start to tweak with really very mild traditional herbs, and it's very sustainable, kind of wholesome experience, rather than, you know, do you know what I'm saying? It's just a much more wholesome, sustainable experience.
Well, I think taking it back to basics, the main constituent of your brain is water. So if you're dehydrated, your brain will be smaller than it ought to be and won't work properly. The second ingredient of the brain is fat, primarily cholesterol. So if you're eating a low-fat diet, you're going to have a smaller brain. Yeah.
Well, there's a wonderful book that I think it's just written a couple of years ago called Neurogenesis by Brant Courtwright, a psychologist in California, and that's it's a great reference book actually for the kind of foods that are good for regenerating your brain, and blueberries is one of them. But exercise is absolutely crucial as well. That gets forgotten, but we actually need exercise to regenerate neural tissue.
Right. This is very, very interesting. Does your diet influence how well you sleep?
of course, yeah. But you know, I would say we've got so many factors now to deal with, and you know, it's really, I think the main problem is all these the artificial electromagnetic frequencies. I'm very much in favour of melatonin supplementation at bedtime, because I think we're so low in melatonin anyway. That's just a great thing to do. I know some people don't agree with that. I'm really passionate about it. But the more as we get older, and it affects the way our DNA is read as well, because our DNA is read to be designed in with much larger quantities of melatonin around than it is now. So it's anti-aging. There's a book called The Melatonin Miracle. I've forgotten the name of the author, but it's just a cheap paperback. You can get Amazon that explains about that. And then I think we've just got to do something to protect ourselves from electromagnetic frequencies if we've got any chance of sleeping properly. B vitamins are important. What else is important for sleep?
A dark room, no little lights, preferably not watching a screen half an hour at least before you go to bed. Dim the lights over the period of the evening so that it's dimmer, because bright lights wake you up or keep you awake. Turn off all the electrics that you can. And I think every organ, the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, all that, throughout the day, each organ, you could say, has an hour. And so if you're waking up at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock with regularity, it may well be that one of those organs is speaking with you and giving you a warning that, because there's a repair to the liver at a certain time. And so that's something to think about, I think. With the electromagnetic frequencies, I put a video on my Clive de Carle YouTube channel which showed this woman. She'd been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis because her hands were shaking so badly that she couldn't get dressed or couldn't go to the toilet by herself, nothing like that. And it turned out not to be multiple sclerosis, it turned out to be her plasma television. So, if you've got a plasma television, or you're one of the 3% of people who are very susceptible to mobile phones or cordless phones or any electrical device, it's worth considering. If you've got some sort of mystery disease that's just arrived, could it be because your next door neighbor has just installed a very powerful router or something? These days we have to think.
Smart meters.
Smart meters.
Really have it with people's health.
Well, absolutely. And of course, you go to the doctor and they're not going to say, is it because you've just had a smart meter installed or your neighbour has?
You've got a deficiency of drugs.
I mean, this lady, if somebody hadn't worked out it was her plasma TV, she would have been on drugs for the whole of her life, would never have been able to go to the toilet ever again. I mean, it's just horrendous.
Yeah.
And within 6 weeks of removing the plasma television, the shaking stopped.
Something so simple. Looking at a holistic solution rather than a focused solution. Gosh, that's terrible.
It's incredible, isn't it, really? And I mean, if 3% of people are that sensitive, how many people are misdiagnosed?
Yeah. I use a device called, it goes everywhere with me now, GeoCleanse, which actually comes from Australia. Device by someone called Gerardini. Actually, I've got an interview with him on my own site, but it doesn't, I have to say, it doesn't completely you make up for all of it, but it's just it's made the difference for me with being woken up in the night, because where my family are, the signals are so strong that they'll set off my car alarm. I had to disable the car alarm. And I was told to do that by a car mechanic. This isn't anybody with any particular axe to grind. It's just a mechanical observation that the signals are so strong they're setting off my car alarm. And I couldn't even really be there for more than a few hours, really, and until I got this GeoCleanse device. But there's a lot of stuff around now on the market, and you just have to find something that, if necessary, completely screening rooms, completely screening beds, really, using screening materials.
And try and block out the modern world and the modern electrical noise.
Electromagnetic frequencies, yeah.
You could sleep in a homemade Faraday cage. You could paint the walls with anti-EMF paint, and the floors and the ceilings. There are ways to do it, because you wouldn't get a mobile signal in your house after that.
Damn.
Paradise. Now, and just going back to foods, a viewer has asked, do darker coloured fruits and vegetables have more nutrients than lighter coloured ones? It's quite an interesting question.
Generally, it's absolutely true.
Yeah, yeah, and all those, yeah, and it's, you know, it's our relationship to it. The reason we see those colours is it's all part of our design to draw us to those colours, to eat them, because they're attractive to us.
Yeah, wow. Just a few more questions. What food is recommended to a person who has a hormonal imbalance? Is there any stabilizing food? It's a bit of a tough one.
Well, yeah, it's too general to answer, because what sort of hormonal imbalance? You know, I mean, one way of looking at it is that all the hormones have a basis of iodine, and if you're exposed to fluoride, chlorine, or bromine, then that's going to upset your hormones. It's too complicated a question, really, just to say, boom, it's this.
Yeah.
There are many factors controlling that.
Well, we're all hormonally imbalanced, really, because that's, you know, in a general sense, but we're talking about things that really come to a head that are causing people really, you know, noticeable problems, and that really, you know, that would need further investigation for the specific situation.
Right. Okay, we're down to the final question, so we'll do a good one on this one. Back to B12 again, Clive. You touched on B12 as a supplement for a person that's a vegetarian, but are there any vegetables that naturally have vitamin B12?
Well, actually, not many, because you know, fermenting vegetables will give you some B12. But it's a bit of an issue, and most doctors will test your B12 levels. The only problem is, in England, for instance, they say an acceptable level is over 400. You know, that's the number. But many people in the natural health world would feel like over 800 would be more like what you want. But there are 3 types of B12 out there. Cyanocobalamin, which is a fifth of the price of the next one up, which is methylcobalamin. And then there's one more expensive, that's hydroxycobalamin. And you know, if you're taking B12, you want to have a look and see whether it's the cyano version, which is the not bioavailable version. People use that because it's a fifth of the price. So for the unscrupulous vendor of supplements, they'll choose cyanocobalamin. No, the chemist will know that it's not really the one you want, but it's a fifth of the price, so what, sort of thing. So anybody who's got a multi-mineral, a good way to tell whether the manufacturer of the multi-mineral cares or not, this is one of the tests I use to judge whether it's a good one or not, is which type of B12 they've chosen. Have they chosen the more expensive one because they know it works?
But my understanding is that a lot of plant sources of B12 just they're not the right type for the body to absorb.
Well, all I know is a lot of people have problems after a while if they're not eating animal produce. You know, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
And I think, as you say, it's probably the insect connection that people are missing, because people think it's black and white. Well, eating animals is cruel, therefore I won't do it, therefore veggie must be fine. But if, you know, I mean, I go out foraging and I pick things like nettles, for example. And when you look at the nettles, you can't really necessarily see the insect on them. But if you put the nettles down on the counter and shake them a bit, hundreds of insects come off. Yeah. And I think if we were in the wild and we were picking,
we wouldn't be picking all those bits out.
No, we'd just be shoving them in.
And it's like fruit, like figs, for example. It's a classic example. Wasps nest in fruit, and even when they've gone, they've left a lot of material behind them. It's not like a supermarket fig.
Yeah. Well, this is absolutely true. So I've got to get on, actually. So
I think we finished.
No, well, that was the last question. So thank you very much for your time, Clive and Holly. Thank you for coming back onto our show, Clive, and it's lovely to meet you, Holly. I've learned a lot, and Clive, I've got to thank you for your banana trick, the banana, coconut oil, and cocoa powder, because I've got 3 bananas waiting to be processed when I get home.
Very good.
And so thank you for that.
Well, good. So anytime you want us back, just call us up.
Wonderful. Well, that will happen, I'm sure, because viewers ask for you back, Clive.
And
so
let me just do shameless advertising. Holly, tell them how they can contact you, your site.
Oh, my site is edenicstates.com. That's EDENICSTATES.com. And that's it's a book and education site. I've got another food site as well. I have to separate them out. But that's the site my book's on.
Well, I recommend our viewers visit Holly's site and see what she has to offer. And Clive, you've mentioned your YouTube channel and you've got your own site as well, which people can...
It's very simple. It's clivedecarle.com, and de Carle is D-E-C-A-R-L-E. clivedecarle.com or Clive de Carle on YouTube.
Thank you very much, both of you, for being on our show. So thank you, viewers, for watching. You've been watching a SAMA webinar, SAMA standing for Spooky Ask Me Anything. If you'd like to be on our show to teach our viewers a certain area of your expertise, please drop us a line at SAMA, S-A-M-A, at spooky2-more.com. If you can just drop us a short email, just tell us what you'd like to talk about, and we'll contact you and we'll arrange everything for you. So thanks once again, everybody, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.